Hi everyone, Phil from Tech for Techs here. Today we're going to be looking at this new offering from Arctic. It's the Freezer 50. You might go, oh, we've seen a Freezer 50 review you've done before. It's not. That was the Freezer 50 TR, which was for Threadrippers. This is for consumer CPUs like your Intel i3, 5, 7 and stuff like the AMD Ryzen processor. So basically most of your modern sockets, but not going to obviously Threadripper level. And this is the second offering after the 50 TR, which Arctic has done, which includes RGB lighting. So we're going to see if they focused more on design and RGB lighting than cooling, or if it's going to hold up to the Arctic name and keep everything as cool as it should. Okay, as you can see, we're looking at the Arctic Freezer 50. It's a multi-compatible dual tower CPU cooler with A-RGB. That means addressable RGB lighting. So let's have a look. It looks very similar to the 50 TR, which I've looked at in the past, which looks like that. I'm guessing it's going to be pretty much the same thing. I'm guessing just on a smaller scale, but we'll find out in a few minutes. I haven't been sent any information from Arctic regarding this because at time of filming they haven't actually released this product, so we're getting to see it before anyone else. So let's have a quick look at the rest of the box. So on the side it tells you it's heat pipe, direct touch, 6mm x 6. Heat sink is aluminium fins, and there's 104 of those, and the thickness is 0.5mm. The thermal compound is MX4, which is their decent thermal cooling paste. The size of the cooler is 149.5mm by 166 by 148. The net weight is 1,160 grams. Socket compatibility is Intel, pretty much all modern ones. So the 1200, the 1150Xs, the 1266, and the 2011, and AMD, it's AM4 sockets only. The connector is the 3-pin connector for RGB. The fans, it's got 120mm fan and one 140mm fan running at 1,800 and 1,700 RPM. It's got fluid dynamic bearings, and you've got all your basic stuff on there. And they tested it with Prime 95. So on the back you've got addressable RGB, you've got dual tower design, you've got pressure optimized fans, you've got push-pull configuration, fluid dynamic bearing, it's even got Teflon steel and so forth in there, and you've got easy mounting solution as well. We'll see how easy is. Then on this side you've got all your different languages on there, as well as a barcode. On this side you've got all your different languages as well as a QR code, which you'd usually get your online manual at. It tells you what it contains. It contains the freezer, 2 mounting plates, 1 mounting bracket. You've got 12 standoffs, you've got 4 thumb nuts, MX4, and a manual card, which is, I'm guessing, is going to be the same as that. So let's open it up and have a look what we've got. So what do we have in the box? Let's start with the smallest items first. You've got a QR code which will bring you up the manual. They do this to save on the environment and so forth. It's blank on one side. Why didn't include information what's on this? On the other side, to save even more environment, paper and all that on the other. Who knows? At the moment I can't really check the QR code because the product is yet not released and they haven't released the links, so I can't do anything. So it's top secret while we're filming this, so no one knows about it apparently. Okay, just saying thank you for buying, blah blah blah. Again, that should be on that other little card if they want to be really carbon neutral and so forth. You've got all your brackets in here. You can see some MX4 paste as well, screws, standoffs and stuff like that, sort of things you'd expect to see in a little bag like that. Different fittings for different coolers. Then you've got the cooler itself. Now first look, that looked very similar, near enough identical to the Threadripper TR, what we did, which luckily I've got on the shelf just behind us. And oh look, can you see the difference? Other than the little sticker on the side. that looks pretty much identical. The only thing I'm noticing, which is different, is the mounting on the bottom, which in all honesty isn't that far off different, and the amount of heat pipes. This one has got a total of 8 heat pipes, so 4 there, and the sort of gap in the middle, where these are more pushed together, and there are 6 in total. So it looks like there's 2 less heat pipes, and obviously probably don't need 8 heat pipes when the actual size of it'll probably end up being bigger than the CPU if you did have that many heat pipes going in there. But it gives you a rough idea. But otherwise, they look identical. It just makes me wonder if they've not sold enough of the Threadripper version, so they thought, right, let's go and redesign it and make the standard Freezer 50 for all the other coolers. Now, one big issue we did have with the Freezer TR, unfortunately, was the clearances for memory. Because of the way the Threadripper's memory pushes all the way up to the socket, you had to have a really low profile memory. I think it was under 31mm. So if you wanted RGB RAM in there or anything with a large heatsink, it just wouldn't fit. Which was a bit of a pain. But let's have a closer look at this then. So as you can see, as we said, you have got those heat pipes there. So the 6 altogether, the loop all the way around, so it's not 6 there, 6 there, it's 6, so that one goes all the way around, for example. It's got a nice shiny base, it's not pre-applied. There is a bit of scuffing on the bottom, in all honesty. As you can see that there. So it's not the shiniest or most polished bottom I've ever seen on a cooler. But again, it is on heat pipes, but still. So that's not the best start, but again, probably makes very little difference. So, as you can see there, that's the outtake, so you'd have that point in the rear side of your case usually, and that's the front, so that fan sucks the air in, blows through to the central fan, which, if I can open it up, here we go, this slides off. So there's a central fan, which is larger, which then obviously sucks and blows more air through the second basically pylon or tower and out the back. And as you can see there, is really just 2 towers with a fan there and a fan in the middle with a little bit of moulding on it to make it look nice. Bear in mind, these fans are not standard fans. You can't go out and buy another fan and put it on there. It has to be this exact fan. Same with the central one. You're going to need to have fans made specifically for this. So for whatever reason you wanted, let's say put a Cooler Master fan on there or a thermal take fan on there with more RGB on it, you ain't going to do it. It ain't going to fit. Okay? There is RGB on this, bear in mind. I'm going to slide that back down, if you can, which is there. So that bit lights up, and I'm guessing this bit does here as well, if I recall correctly. So you do have some RGB controls there. So that's all through that central bit. The cabling on here, you have got a 4-pin fan connector as well as another 4-pin which you attach to the front fan to. That bit there goes to your motherboard. That's your RGB. So that's what you would connect to your motherboard. So your motherboard needs to have a header what you can plug that into. If it's just a standard RGB, which is 4 pins or 3 pins next to each other, it isn't going to work. It has to be the 2 with 1 missing in the middle and then 1. So it's classed as 3 pin. I usually call it 4-1 to make it simple for people. Okay, so that's basically what it looks like. Is it going to perform? Is it going to fit on the motherboard? Hopefully it will. And I won't have to go out and buy new memory, otherwise I will be a bit annoyed. But it does look like they've repurposed everything off of the TR model to make this one, which was probably the plan initially anyway, but it just looks identical. If you didn't turn it upside down and look at those heat pipes, where there's just obviously the 2 extra heat pipes, and obviously the base just to lean a little bit wider, you wouldn't notice the difference. Okay, down to testing. In basics, all testing is done on the same machine, with the same version of Windows, with the same version of programs. We disable internet access, so no programs, updates or anything can be installed or updates what can affect any of the results. All background tasks which are non-essential get disabled, so again they will not affect the testing. The testing room has air conditioning / heaters built in to keep the temperature at 18.5 degrees Celsius. Also decibel levels are at a steady 45.6 decibels. When testing things like fans, we set the speeds at 50% and 100% and not auto, because obviously if you've got something set at auto, it will adjust the fan speed up and down to adjust the temperature to the optimal temperature, so it can affect results. So we set the fan speeds at set speeds like 50% and 100%. All testing is done on a 10700K i7 processor, 16 gig of RAM, as well as a 5CUDA SSD, and the same motherboard, and all the other components are the same for every single test. Full specifications are in the description. Okay, let's get down to testing. As you can see here, we've tested 6 different coolers, from an Intel stock cooler all the way to the new Arctic Freezer 50. The idle temperatures, this is basically when the machine is sitting there doing nothing. So it's sitting there basically just windows on, not doing anything else, and the fan speed is set at 50%. So you can see what sort of temperatures we're getting. They're all very similar, within a couple of degrees. They're all roughly the same sort of temperature, so not much of a difference there as expected. On this next test, we run the machine at full load. That means we run the processor at 100% whack. All 8 cores are basically running as fast as they can go and doing as much as they can do. And here you can see the Intel stock cooler was not able to keep up. The gel Tranquillo 4 also was struggling to keep up. The rest of the temperatures, again, around about 58 to 62 degrees. Not much of a difference between the whole range, in all honesty. On this next test, we are testing basically the same again, but the fan speed, this time on 100%. The Intel stock cooler managed to just about keep up, and so did the gel Tranquillo 4. But as you can see here, the Arctic Freezer 50 is not really running away. It is a little bit cooler than the Sirocco, but it doesn't actually keep up with the Freezer 34, which is actually the cheaper, older version of the Arctic cooler, which is performing actually slightly better. Next on to overclocking test. So we overclock the processor here to 5.1 gigahertz. Again, the Intel stock cooler can't keep up. The gel Tranquillo 4 again can't keep up either. And again, the temperatures here are all very similar, but the Arctic Freezer, considering this is the premium cooler on the list, is only cooling down to 72 degrees compared to the Freezer 34 at 70 and the Phantom Black at 71. So it's not really performing that much better. Now on to decibel levels. This is basically how loud it is. So this is the decibel levels when the machine fans are running at 50%. And as you can see, again, with all the tests, they're all pretty much the same. But the Arctic Freezer is roughly, on average, 1 to 2 decibels louder than the other fans on there, which is surprising because Arctic usually aim their stuff as being cool and quiet. On this next test, it's basically the same again, but 100% fan speed. So we check the decibel level, see how loud it is. And again, joint top, we've got the Arctic Freezer as the loudest at 61 decibels. Again, it's even louder than the Arctic Freezer 34, which is basically its little brother, you could say, which has actually outperformed it and is actually cooler, quieter, well, all round better, apart from it doesn't have RGB lighting, which in most cases is an advantage, not a disadvantage. So overall, this is a weird product to review. We've actually had it in our workshop for quite a while. We got sent it, must have been around about July time. So that's 3-4 months ago now. And while we've been able to test it and so forth, we have received nil information until 24 hours before the product was released. So we've got a 24-hour notice that they were releasing the product, even though we've asked many times and they kept changing the date and so forth, but they hadn't given us a set date. Luckily we asked today, which was the 14th, and they told us, oh yeah, it's getting released tomorrow, which is the 15th, which is very strange that they didn't give us a bit more notice, because we've only just been told about the recommended retail prices. We haven't been given any links or stock footage or anything like that. I have dug around on their website and there's no information about it visible to anyone. Obviously there probably will be tomorrow when it's live, but I have actually managed to find some stuff on there by digging well, very deeply stuff what isn't actually linked yet. So luckily I know my way around a website. But the basics is they do 2 models of this, which we weren't told about. I only found out by digging around onto their website and being told today about the RRP. They do one version which has got a controller for the RGB lighting and another version which doesn't have a controller. And when I say a controller, it looks like you use a remote control outside of the case where you can change the lights on it. But saying that, we had lots of issues with the lights. We actually had 2 units. The first unit, the lighting didn't work at all. Or when I say didn't work at all, we had 2 little blue LEDs light up on it, and that was it. So basically the RGB effect was faulty. We arranged to get another one after around about a month. We managed to get hold of another cooler. We've set that up. The RGB lighting does work, but it does have this flickering effect to it, which is not very nice. I've hooked it up to a different controller, a different header on the board, just to make sure. So it does have this sort of a flicker, annoying effect, which I'm hoping it doesn't affect anyone who's got anything like epilepsy or anything like that, because it's a bit like a strobe light in the way they sometimes flicker. So I'm hoping no one has any issues with that. Otherwise, it looks like the cooler is basically repurposed from the Threadripper version they did, the Freezer 50 TR, which, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with repurposing stuff as long as it is actually good. And they make improvements, but the only difference I can see is basically the stickers on the side are different. It's got a slightly different base on it, so it fits obviously the consumer level CPUs like your Ryzen and Intel i series, and it's got one less heat pipe, but again that's probably due to the size of the base. They had to remove it because otherwise the base would have been too large. But saying that, it's still the same downsides to it. The first downside is the moulded casing around the fans, or pretty much the whole thing is covered in plastic. So if you have a faulty fan, you will have to replace the whole fan with a specific model. So you've got to get basically in touch with Arctic and get a replacement. Don't get me wrong, they do have a 6-year warranty, which is pretty good in itself, but outside of the warranty, or let's just say you can't find your receipt or whatever, you're going to struggle getting hold of that specific part, and that goes for both fans. They are not standard fans. On top of that, the biggest issue I have is with the memory clearance. There doesn't seem to be any notification of this on the box or on the web page I've seen. Bear in mind I've not seen the full proper released web page as of yet, but there's nothing what mentions about the height of the memory. And believe it or not, normal memory, or what most people would have who'd be running a cooler like this, will not fit under there. You're going to need some quite low profiled memory to fit. The standard memory we use for most of our testing, which works on pretty much every cooler we've ever tested it on, will not fit under that CPU cooler, unfortunately. The cooler obstructs 3 basically of the memory slots, so we're only able to access the 4th memory slot on the actual board without getting shorter memory. So if you've got fancy memory with RGB lighting on it, which you probably would if you're going for a cooler like this, which has also got RGB lighting on it, you're probably not going to be able to use that memory without going out and replace the memory. So while the price of the cooler may be 50, 60, 70 pounds or whatever it is, the problem is you may have to go out and buy some new memory for you to be able to use that cooler, which, to be honest with you, is a bit of a pain. Next, we come down to the cooling, or lack of it. Well, no, it's not really lack of it. It does cool down, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't really do any better than the Freezer 34 Duo, which is surprising, to be honest. I expected it to be a lot better performer than that. Don't get me wrong, the Freezer 34 Duo is a good performer, but I didn't expect the Freezer 34 Duo to actually outperform it, not only in sound levels, but in actual cooling on pretty much every single test, which was surprising. Actually, I was that surprised. I actually redid the testing on this cooler 3 times. So originally we tested this cooler first and then did all the testing on the other coolers. Because I was such surprised by the cooling, I actually attached the freezer back up to the testing rig and retested it again. and got the same results. And yet again, the following day, I retested yet again just to make sure there was no fluctuations in temperatures I wasn't aware about and stuff so forth, but we got exactly the same results yet again. So basically we normally do 3 tests on them just to get the average. It actually had 9 tests in total, and within half a degree, generally the tests came out exactly the same each time. The question is, would you buy this? Well, that's totally up to you, but my question to you is, do you want a really huge looking cooler with RGB lighting in your case, where you can't use any proper profiled memory, shall we call it, what has got RGB lighting on, and again it has to be low profile to get under that fan on the cooler, and do you want lesser cooling than their lower end Freezer 34 Esports Duo models? Well, obviously that's up to you. I know what my answer is, and that's no. Unfortunately, I wouldn't go for this at all. I'd rather go for a Freezer 34 Esports Duo, and if I wanted RGB lighting, swap the fans out for some RGB fans. So, final thoughts. What went wrong here? I don't know really. The only thing I can think of is one of the board members or the group have gone, oh, we need flashy lights, we need to sell more products. Cooler Master are doing it, Thermaltake's doing it, Aerocool's doing it, all of them are doing it. We're years behind, everyone's got RGB lighting, we want flashy lights. Then they've gone down to the basically the guys in the research room or the development stage of manufacturing and gone, right, we need a cooler, it's got lots of flashy lights on it, you put them on. And they've gone back to the boardroom and said, no, you'll lose performance, blah 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 blah, but the boardroom says, no, we need to sell more, you make it now. And they've gone and made it, but they have lost performance. It doesn't seem to perform better than the older non-RG models of products, which is a shame. It's a real pain because obviously the word Arctic, the brand name, means cold. Obviously, like the Arctic Circle and so forth is really cold. And that's what the products are supposed to do, keep things nice and cool. Generally, keeping things nice and cool and RGB lighting together doesn't always work. It's a bit like, I don't know, getting a 4x4 vehicle and putting low profile tyres on it. You're sort of making it look nice, but it's not very practical. So if you're wanting the best cooler in the world, and generally the best ones out there don't have RGB lighting on, and there's a reason